All right, welcome to another episode of Some Days Today. My name is Bola Odina, and I am your host. I am joined by my co-host, Mac Odina.
Welcome. Glad to be here, as always.
Yeah, so today is June 4th, and I am stating the date because I want to put things in context. So we are coming out of a very difficult week. What's been difficult for a lot of people, given all the protests, the unrest, which relates to the murder of
George Floyd, there's been two different murders. One by people who our tax dollars are our hard-earned money, which we pay through our tax dollars, pay for. They're supposed to serve and protect us amongst other members, other citizens. And then one, Ahmaud Arbery, who was killed by, some racist other citizens of the United States. So I think it's always a lot more. Well, I don't know. I was actually really disturbed by the Ahmaud Arbery one, but I think it's a lot more disturbing when you think this is my money. I'm actually paying for people to come and kill me. I'm paying for my own assassins. This is freaking crazy.
So, so before we dive in, and I think this is going to be an even more difficult conversation to sort of reel in, more so than our other conversations where we're always going off in tangents and all over the place. I'm just going to give a little bit of a background. To be honest, I've been very protective of my mental space for some time now. I have realized that I actually internalize stress and I don't process it well. So then it then shows up through various pains in my body. I'm in a state of disorientation. I mean, there was a time maybe 4 years ago when I was really confused as to what was going on with my body. So when I connected that what was happening to me was related to stress, then I started paying attention to what I allowed to stress me out. And almost at the same time, I also realized how much stress impacted my psyche. Just the noise that comes in and how it weighs me down and keeps me unable to think. So the last time I was really involved in, you know, a black man or black boy getting killed, and when I really internalized it and it did a number on me, was Trayvon Martin. And I think there were some deaths that came in pretty close successions afterwards. And I just remember that time there was just so much going on, and it just took a lot out of me. I was exhausted. I have a son, and I remember just feeling overwhelmed, powerless, and hurting, not only for the victims, but also for the men in my family, obviously myself as a black woman, but also my son, because obviously when you have children, you want to protect them as much as possible. They're these beautiful, perfect creatures, and it's alarming to think that, the world could view them as threats to the point where, their lives could be taken so callously, while the rest of the world is watching and questioning what the big deal was. So that really did a number on me, and I think that was soon followed by the boy, I think he was in Ohio, who was playing with a little toy gun, who got shot. And once again, it just threw me into the space of disbelief, and I remember just it wearing me out. So since then, and realizing that these things really just take a toll on my mental health personally, I've sort of tried to distance myself away from these news when they come up. And every now and then, every year you'll see, an outrage, somebody will get killed and all of that. And I'll be somewhat familiar with it, but I don't watch the videos. I don't try to read about the stories. My heart goes out to the families and I pray for them, and, try to do whatever I can without letting the energy in. So I say all that to say that when I started seeing news of, I think it was Ahmaud Aubrey that this happened to first on my social media. To be honest, I really just didn't want to engage in it. You know, I was trying to figure out a way to scroll past it. We're quarantining anyways. We don't have regular cable, so I can pick and choose what I tune into. And for the most part, I've sort of been tuned out of it. I didn't realize this had gotten as big as it did. And I didn't realize there was a second episode, to be honest, until this weekend. So, Mac, what have you been following? You know, the events and then the outrage leading to the protests and, you know, the rioting and all of that. Had you been following to the point where you were aware, and how have you been processing it?
All right, so a couple of things before we get started is I want to say that these are our opinions, and you know, other people who have opinions are free to express them. We don't have a large group, but I know that Black social media, they used to call them Black Twitter, but we're everywhere now, will quickly swoop down and try to annihilate anyone with what I believe is a difference of opinion than theirs, or if you misstate it. I know, for example, Trina had the gall to call people who are looting animals.
Who's Trina? The baddest bitch?
Baddest bitch. Yeah, she had the gall to call, you know, people who are looting animals. And, you know, I mean, there's nuances. We can get into debates ourselves. And so there are ways that if you do not state something in the most precise of ways, and even when you actually do, and even right before you said, I do understand, and you present the other side, but here's my opinion, you cannot deviate in any way from whatever idea it is that you are supposed to have had. And so I want to make it clear that, you know, we do understand, but we also are people who have the right to have our own opinion. And I do understand the fear too. Like, you know, I've made the argument that if we do not make certain ideas not palatable, if we do not allow them to become normative, then the potential, you know, the extreme potential is that you can end up in a situation where, you know, World War II, Nazi Germany, where people are like, yeah, it is okay to just put people in internment camps. And so I do get the reason why people want to make sure that this doesn't happen, but it also can stifle honest conversation. And I wanted to put that out there because we are going to be stating our opinions. I also want to say, you know, this is Someday is Today, which, you know, is about, you know, making steps right away, right now, as you stand. So I want to make sure that we are relating it to that. 2 points that I want to make before I start to have my own conversation. And so, yes, have I been following? To answer your question now, have I been following? I think the first person who alerted me to the Ahmaud Arbery one was my sister-in-law, and then she sent a video, and I saw it, and for me, that was like, wow. It was the same thing that I kind of felt when I saw Trayvon laying on the ground, mouth open. It was vivid. It was like it was anger. Like
So can you explain? I mean, I guess most people, I haven't seen the video, but can you explain the video just to put it in context?
Which one? Oh, the Ahmaud one. So Ahmaud, you know, he's jogging down the street. Somebody is in the car videotaping him. So I didn't know who it was at the time. We later find out he was involved with the whole basically chase down and lynching. And he's, you know, there's a truck in front of him, and he's going by the truck. He's trying to pass to the right side of the truck.
Ahmaud,
who's jogging. There's a truck. There is a truck in front of him, so he's trying to, you know, go around the truck to the right side of the truck. And at that point, I assume he notices, because you can't see the guy in the gun with the gun. He notices the guy in the gun. He tries to go around the guy, and you know, the guy comes in, and you know, they get off to the side, and I think they're tussling. You know, I hear the first shot, and then they come back into the frame, and you see Ahmaud fighting the man, which is, you know, what's up, because the man went down fighting. He didn't, you know, cower or anything of that nature. And so, you hear another shot and you see the shot, like you could see like the like I guess I don't know what to call it, like blood or whatever splattering away or some kind of, and then after that guy, I mean, it was a point blank shot, so both realize it's pretty much over. The guy, basically stops chasing after that. Ahmad stops, fighting after that, and turns around to try to continue to run away, to continue on about his way, and then he maybe takes another 3 steps, and then he falls to the ground on his face.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
But yeah,
so you saw that,
I did see
and
that.
you said you felt anger.
Yeah, I felt
Okay.
angry. I felt
Even hearing it right now, I mean, this is why I don't watch it, because I don't know how to process it. It's very emotional. I can't even imagine seeing that. I feel like that will haunt me for a long time. So it's interesting, and I know you're going to talk about the other video, but for me, I can't even see a dead animal on the street without feeling a ways about it. So I just wonder, how have you, as a black man, you're seeing another black man in America, and I can only imagine that now makes you feel vulnerable. You think about your son, maybe your brothers, your other family members. How are you able to process all of this in a way that it doesn't discombobulate you? It's kind of like watching a scary movie. It leaves an imprint on you. It impacts your psyche. Like, how are you comfortably able to watch that and move on about your day? Like, how do you process that?
So I know different people react differently. So from my perspective, when I saw Ahmaud Arbery more particularly than the George Floyd one, I mean, there's a sense of, okay, well, there's a sense of helplessness. Like, I mean, I wish I could. I mean, if this man was in front of me, it would go down, But then it's miles away. Or whatever, hundreds of miles away, whatever the case may be. And then I don't know. I kind of try to, I guess I isolate them. Clearly these things are happening, and it angers me in such a way that I don't know why we're being treated that way. But I don't know that I
So you don't
carry
necessarily okay, you don't carry it. Gotcha.
No.
And I think that's interesting.
Nor do I place myself in the immediate position where I feel like that would happen to me or my children. And obviously it could. I mean, in this particular situation,
America.
this guy is freaking running, but I
Yeah.
mean, it's not, it's like he's just running,
Right.
That's all he's doing. And so it obviously could. It's just that I mean, for me to just be like, oh my God, this could happen, would be like watching a car accident and saying, well, this could happen to me too. Well, it's obvious that it could too, but I don't know that I take it and say that's what's going to happen to me.
Okay, so it doesn't impact you. Because for me, I mean, not that it doesn't impact you. I mean, clearly it does, but I'm saying in a way that it impacts me. To me, and this is why me not watching the videos is almost an act of resistance, even in a way for me, because I just don't think it's acceptable to be sharing videos of bodies, human beings being killed like that. There's something that's not humane about it, and it's very concerning to me. And this is why this is so complicated. It's such a difficult topic to even talk about. And I think that's why you talked about, the opinions earlier, because for me, it's not even, it's out of compassion, out of the humanity of it all, out of, me understanding my blackness and being able to connect to this man, who could be my brother, my father, my son, and all of that. It's out of that and wanting to preserve the humanity of us that I can't watch. I don't want our death to be cheapened that way, so I question, and I know there's, how do you balance resistance and, saying the names and, showing the videos and publicizing it, which we talked about yesterday. And you talked about the importance of making people aware of it, which is so important. But I think it's a double-edged sword as well, because number one, I think it does impact the psyche of the people who are watching it. But I think also the people who are observing it, who perhaps are not Black, there's almost something, when something has happened in a repeated manner, it becomes cheapened. It's like, oh yeah, you could easily take a Black life and then, we continue to scroll on about our day to the next thing. It's not, it makes it almost, it's almost as if it's permitted. I don't know what it, I don't know that I've ever really seen someone get shot and fall down. I don't want to see it outside of a movie, and even then it's pretty shocking to me. So I don't know. It's a tough one. But that's why I didn't watch it, because I know physically and emotionally I can't handle it. But politically, I also feel like, when you look at pictures of, bodies, dead bodies and photographs from war, they blur it because you're not supposed to see that. You're not supposed to see that. So for us to, be seeing this and be sharing this, I just think it does so much damage to us. And I didn't even realize the children had seen it, or are aware of this, because I was also trying to protect them, but apparently everything is out on TikTok. So Amy was saying, oh yeah, I heard about this on TikTok, and I'm just like, you can't even protect your children against this, because you want them to be preserved. You want them to feel like they are perfect and they're not a threat because of their skin, and the world welcomes them and lights up just as much as we do when they walk in. But that's not true. And when they're seeing the opposite out on the street, how can it not have them questioning who they are, what value do they have to add to the world, and how are they being perceived? So anyway, so that's that video, which is pretty heavy, but go ahead.
So yes, so the response to that. We did discuss this yesterday. And I mean, there was many different opinions on it. I think the way that I want to start it today, because there are many things that we said, but the way that I want to start it today, and I think this is part of what we want to talk about. I mean, for me, there is a kind of a protest fatigue. Like, I feel like whenever certain things happen, we're always jumping into protest. And from my perspective, it's like, how long are we gonna keep on begging these fools to give us what we want? Beggars can't be choosers. And I know, again, this is exactly why I said what I had said in the beginning. People are gonna take that word and be like, what the heck do you mean? There's plenty of arguments to the other side. This is our money, that we are citizens, we should do it. And all, from my perspective, this is not to say that we should not fight on all fronts.
And you're saying we, you mean black
people.
Uh-huh.
Yes, we should not fight on all fronts. It shouldn't be that we shouldn't vote, we shouldn't do all these things, we shouldn't protest. It's just, from my perspective, like, the focus needs to be on being independent. Being, like, when you talk about Ferguson, that is a majority black population city, and they had like 53 cops, and I think it was like, I don't know the exact numbers, but I know it was dismal. I think the mayor was freaking white and all this other stuff. When you're not represented by your own people, you have to come hat in hand to ask people to treat you the way that you want. And this is how I took protests. And as a person who participated in protests, yeah.
Okay,
we can discuss it a little more later. But I'm expressing my thoughts, and so this is how. I'm starting here because I want to say that this is the way that I felt when people started, just protesting in one way or another. This is how I felt, protest fatigue and that sort of thing. But I also understand the other side. The other side, which is, if you think about it, the reason why the civil rights movement was so effective is because these images of people getting bitten by dogs, being sprayed by water hose and that sort of thing, was being bought into the face of white people who had no idea that these things were going on. This was the brilliance of Martin Luther King, you know, because the idea is he was communicating with a different audience than, say, a Malcolm X. Malcolm X was saying, "Black people, get yourselves together." Martin Luther King was saying, "Hey, we are your citizens, and this is what's happening to us. We need your assistance here." And so I get that. Like, the part of the reason why stuff doesn't happen in North Korea is because nobody anywhere hears about it. You know, when you see something like a person standing in front of a large tank in Tiananmen Square, it starts to galvanize people, because a lot of times you're only concerned with what is there. Like, I think the word is, people are concerned with like the emergencies and not what's, or whatever the term
Not what's
is,
important.
not what's important.
Yeah.
And so right now you're only concerned with what is on your day-to-day life. Until this is made relevant to you, you're not going to fight. And so I also understand the reason. And so when we talk about whether or not people become desensitized to the idea of Black people, you know, being murdered, that's precisely why, if that image comes out, you do need to scream and yell so that it does not become the norm. Yeah. So,
absolutely. I mean, yes, I completely get it. I understand. I almost feel, I can't even explain the range of emotions that I'm feeling, because you do feel torn, and I feel torn. But I think there's a space as well, because we've been so battered. We're gonna read some of James Baldwin's quotes, but there's one that's really popular that he says, to be Black in America and to be conscious, even somewhat conscious or awake in any way, is for you to constantly be enraged. You're just living in a state of rage. So I think that's sort of what I'm struggling with, is just wanting to exist as a regular human being, but having this constant feeling of rage that I've got to battle with, which is like constant trauma. Like, you're just constantly exposed to trauma. And that's very damaging, on your body physically. I know on me. And, we talk about mental illness within the Black community, which we had an episode recently with Dr. Bolandley. And, trauma is something that, your body, it just travels through your body, and it impacts you in ways that you don't even realize for years, and maybe even decades. Like, things that you don't even realize are affecting you and impacting your day-to-day, you're having to process, later on. So it's difficult. It's definitely a difficult thing, because you don't really know what do you do. And I guess that's the paradox of what it is to be Black in America. You want to protect yourself, but you can't help but feel enraged, and be drawn into it. But okay, so that's now, that. Go ahead.
I don't know exactly how we should have probably discussed how we wanted to structure this ahead of time, but
that's fine. I do want to get to the other death, but
no, well, so what I wanted to say is I don't exactly. So with respect to this this thing, I know that for a while I was like, oh my God. I mean, honestly, like I saw the growing protests, and I was sort of like, wow, I can't believe it's getting to this level.
I didn't realize how bad it got until I was at dinner the other day, and they said DC is like a complete mess.
I don't know how true that is, but
no, apparently it is. But anyways, go ahead.
I mean, they are putting curfews and everything. I mean, we're outside of DC, not that far, or that much close to it. They're putting curfews and everything. But I mean, even when Minnesota started to flare up and buildings were burning, I was like, wow, I can't believe that it's gotten to that point. Because I mean, in some ways, I guess I had already become desensitized to the idea that this happens, and it's like, okay, here's another one. And the idea that people were getting to this level of righteous rage was kind of interesting to me, I guess partially because I guess there's a learned helplessness involved in this. It's like, I mean, really, what exactly do you think is going to happen? But I also remember thinking, um, you know, okay, just what exactly is the end goal? What do you want to have happen? And then since then, people have started to come up with, here's some, like I remember the eight,
The eight can't wait.
eight can't wait. So, it
Demands
is,
of reform that needs to take place within
right.
the police.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just say this to say that immediately I was thinking to myself, why all of this? There was a helplessness part of this, and there was this, but because people continue to post, I started to get drawn in. We started to get drawn in. Part of the reason we're having this conversation today is because we started to get drawn in. So, in essence, it is sort of necessary, right? It is necessary. Like, I mean, one of the ways that we explain protests to our youngest, our 9-year-old, was okay when you can't get what you want, you start to scream, right? Like, because you don't have any power, you start to scream. And so, you may not actually know precisely what the heck is wrong or how to say, here's what I need to have change, but something is wrong, and you're like, something's got to happen until the dialogue starts to happen, and then people start to have the conversation and say, okay, here's some of the things that we can do. And not everybody's going to be the ones coming up with what to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're saying is the fight is necessary on all fronts.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we do need to be enraged. We need to scream. We need to protest. We need to, share the imagery. And then we also need to find solutions. We need to find process and all of that. And for me, I think part of what I wanted to stress, because I know I'm not the only Black person. I had dinner with 2 other friends who said the same thing. I couldn't watch it. I don't want to be drawn into it. So I think we also have to leave room for our own humanity to be preserved as Black people. You know what I mean? Because when you feel, like you said, when you feel like you are not only fatigued from, feeling helpless, sense of helplessness is damaging in and of itself. But I think watching that type of scene, just does something to your psyche. So I think we also need to have conversations, particularly when we're discussing the importance of mental health. I think it's okay for you to take a break from it, to feel like, I could still be Black, I could still be interested in progress, but I don't have to fight on all fronts. There are different ways for me to, be of support without feeling like I need to, be all engulfed in this, So I think it's important to have that conversation because it is difficult, especially with social media, especially, when everything is so comprehensive, in terms of this topic. That's all we talk about. You don't know where you can occupy comfortably as a Black person who just feels like it's too much for them to even process, let alone now speak something about.
Right.
But
I mean, for me, again, on this, and again, I don't know how, but I feel like I don't know exactly where your quotes are going to come in. But for me, with respect to this, and I don't know why maybe like you were saying, what, I just don't want to have my mind disturbed in such a way. But ultimately, if you are talking about your children, your sons, your husbands, you want this thing to have change, and something has to happen. So that's why for me, if you've gotten to that point where you said, okay, I don't want to be disturbed, but I also don't want this to be life for myself, then the question, and this is where I was at, it's like, protest. I mean, when do we actually freaking do something that means something? And for me, there is an idea that we have in our minds as to what that should be.
So we'll talk about
I think
that.
That's what it is that was really the thing for, and we will talk about that. And so I think that's what it is for us, where it's kind of like, here we go, protest again. I mean, what about all the 300 64 days of the week of the year when you're supposed to be doing A and you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna wait for that one day
Yeah.
and then I'm gonna go protest. Like, and that's what was problematic. And I know, I've heard people be like, yeah, you shouldn't, we shouldn't be putting down what other people are doing, or this meme like everybody does what they can do, and that sort of thing, and don't put anybody's efforts down or whatever the case may be. But it's kind of like, at some point, this is, I think, the frustrating part for me. This is why I want to say, at some point it's going to be like, fuck that shit. Like, if we really, these people, Trump, the president of these United States, is talking about like when the looting starts, the shooting starts, I'm gonna go and put order in. This is your president, and now what we're saying is, let's go ask them for assistance. No, at some point it's like, let me get my shit together. Fuck these people, and like the 364 days, how are we getting our shit together?
Yeah.
So that we can be all good and ready on our own on that 365th.
Yeah.
So,
but the reason why this is such a difficult thing to tackle, and you mentioned Nuaman, who is our son, is you just talked about how there's protest fatigue that you're experiencing, but then he just he got up, like he's been preparing all morning, because part of the people in his friendship groups who are not Black are saying, oh my God, this protest is so stupid, and he's like,
they're Asian, just so. And just,
I don't think they're all Asian.
I think most of them. And the point, and the reason I wanted to clarify is because, I mean, we can.
Insecure always works itself into this. Some days today.
God, no, this has nothing to do about no goddamn Molly. Boyfriend? Yeah, I know it has nothing to do with Molly.
It's the same thing.
Oh, I get it.
You remember the brother who was saying
in the pool?
Isn't there a different way to? I swear to God, Issa be thinking. Issa, like these are the things that we struggle with. But anyways, the point is,
Issa be thinking.
Issa be thinking. She be doing it. But that's the thing. Like Nuaman is like his friends are like, really, y'all protesting? And he was outraged. And when he told us, that his friends are saying, that they're about to have a debate today, where they're going to go back and forth as to whether or not protesting or rioting or whatever it is beneficial. And his team says, of course it is. And then, of course, naturally, we were like, of course it is. And we were giving him points, this is why, whatever. So this is
mainly, and I want to make this point right now, this model minority myth, it's all nice and beautiful because we had to sit there and fight for the rights. We are the ones, Black people, who got our ass kicked all over the place and are now being labeled angry Black men or angry Black women, but we also changed the right. We also are the ones responsible for civil rights. Yes. But as far as civil rights and all these other things, we are the ones who fought and bore the scars from our fighting. And at the end of when we've gotten laws to change, the model minority could come in and quietly say, well, you can get diversity and not have to deal with the angry part. It's like, yeah, you get the benefit from this, and yet you don't acknowledge how important it is that we actually did this so that you can benefit from it. You know what I mean? And so I think that needs to be clear, amongst other very important reasons why, they should not discount the work and effort that African Americans have put in together. Because I am a Haitian immigrant, and I know that I benefited from it, and I know that I also dealt when I was growing up with my father saying, don't associate with African Americans because of the perception that was there. And it's like the reason why you actually chose to travel to the U.S. for opportunity where there would be none for you is because of the work that African Americans put in.
Right.
And so that's one of the many reasons, but I just wanted to note that.
But the reason I brought Nuaman up, just to be clear, is to show sort of the dissonance, that exists within Black people. You can feel fatigued by the rioting and the protesting and feel like, oh my God, is this really going anywhere? But then the minute any other group says this is not beneficial, we already on the other side, stating why it is, why we need to do this. So you could see why, we're struggling on so many fronts with what to do. It's the same reason why, I was speaking with my friend. I don't want to be pulled into this. I don't want to be sharing videos. I don't even want to feel like I don't even know the words to say, I don't even know that I could be articulate enough to, organize those thoughts in a way that would be meaningful enough to represent what I'm feeling. So I choose to say nothing. But then I'm also looking at my white friends saying, y'all not gonna say nothing? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's just so difficult. You almost feel helpless, all around. Anyways, Floyd.
Yes.
Yeah. So George, what when you saw that, I haven't seen that video either. So I explained that because I do want to eventually get to my approach for what I'm going to move myself from a place of weakness, or lack of power or position, and what I feel like I can do moving forward in a sustained way. But I do think it's important to, at the very least, explore our feelings and how we got here. So what were your feelings when you saw that video, George Floyd?
Honestly, for whatever reason, Ahmaud Arbery hit me harder, and probably because I don't know that I watched that video to the end where he was limp, and
So can you explain it for those who haven't seen it?
So there were multiple different videos, and so like captured from different camera angles and different cameras. He was pulled out of a car because he supposedly gave a counter. From what I hear later on, and I haven't done extensive research on this, but what I hear later on, he at first it was like supposed to be a fraudulent check, but then what I heard, it was like a and I don't know how true this is because I'm hearing from different sources, and I don't know how credible these sources are, but that it was a counterfeit $20 bill or something like that, a counterfeit bill, whatever. And so, they came in and pulled him out of a car, and maybe he didn't even understand. Maybe he didn't know it was counterfeit. Like, if you know the nature of counterfeit bills, like somebody could have passed it on to you. Mm-hmm. And so you're like, this is a freaking $20 bill. So you go and you pass it on to someone else. And then, they was pulled out of the car, and I think maybe he was confused or whatever.
So cops came and pulled him out of the car.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, I don't know exactly what happened. Like I said, there's multiple videos, but then at some point they handcuff him, hands, behind his back. And then, the infamous, imagery that you have is of that white cop with, just kneeling down on his neck. And then there's a point where, people videotaped and he's like, I can't breathe. My back hurts. Everything hurts. He's just talking about like, these people are going to kill me. And then this white man is, the white officer is on his neck. Like, it seems like you're talking just fine. And for over 6 minutes, they're just like has his knee on this dude's neck. Eventually, he stops moving, stops talking. And I think, for about a minute more, they still are on this dude's neck until, they lift him up. And I think, get the ambulance, and then he later dies. I think, I don't know, for me, that did not hit me as hard as Arbery because, at least initially, it didn't. Because, I just saw a man just get shot, whereas this one,
the
I
life
guess he was
slowly went out of him. And you probably have accepted your lack of power when it comes to a cop anyways, when it comes to your relationship with police officers. So maybe this is something that is not as shocking because we've seen this time after time where Black men have been gunned down, murdered, mistreated, mishandled. So it's you're probably somewhat desensitized to it.
Yeah, that, and I think, and this is exactly why the video is also important too. It's like, because a lot of times, if I didn't see the Ahmaud Arbery situation, all I would be like is somebody died, and then there's stories. Seeing it, it's like the man is running, like he's trying to get away from you. And then the same situation with respect to this one, like I didn't know precisely what the issue is, because a lot of times we have our own implicit biases about ourselves. So I'm seeing a black man, and from my perspective, at the time of seeing it, I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe he was involved in something. Why, maybe he was resisting
yes.
all this other stuff, and
Yes.
so there's all these things are
which
happening.
in and of itself also speaks to us being desensitized in nature, in general, because regardless of whether or not whatever he did, I don't think it justifies him being killed.
Yeah, you standing on his neck while he's handcuffed.
Right. I mean, so that also speaks. I mean, there's a lot said in that even when we can rationalize intellectually that, well, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, what could the man have done to seeing the video? It almost felt as if you were like, well, I mean, I don't know, what did he do? You know what I mean? So once again, like when Black people get frustrated about, well, you don't see, with our white counterparts or white fellow citizens, and white people are like, I don't know, what did he do? It's almost it's feeding upon itself. This whole ecosystem of racism. This is why it's so dangerous and insidious, and you almost can't see it because you're trying to rationalize things that cannot be rationalized. Because ultimately, and James Baldwin also says this, and I'm going to mess up all his quotes, but I love him. But anyways, he said, it doesn't matter like what the color of your skin is, how tall you are, what your race is, what your gender is, what anything is. Nothing else is more important than your humanity. First and foremost, we're human beings. So it doesn't matter what you did, what you didn't do. You should not have your life taken away from you so callously. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's something that I think in theory, maybe we understand. I mean, we have people fighting for the rights of animals, for the rights of dogs, So I think somehow the wiring, and I don't know if it's the videos, I don't know, obviously racism plays a huge role. The wiring somehow, that connects the fact that these are human beings is frayed. The connection is not getting through for whatever reason. We're able to see these people, particularly Black men, and to some extent, they register as somewhat threatening, somewhat deserving of whatever it is that they get, somewhat not as deserving of grace, of humanity. So the same sort of grace you would show an animal, you can't even bring yourself to extend that to them. So that there's a lot there to grapple with. So I mean, that probably is partly what was playing in your mind as well, because we're also playing into the narrative that's being presented to us.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's important. If I want to bring back the our son and his debate with his Asian friends, it's easy, and when you come here as an immigrant, willingly looking for opportunity, with your mindset, more intact. You didn't have your parents and their parents and their parents before them weren't told they were nothing, they couldn't amount to nothing, and they did not continue to pass on that learning generations down. You came in here thinking all of this was available to you, and
more importantly, you have a knowledge of who you are, your history. You have a knowledge of what your people have done. You have a knowledge of, like, they say when you can tell your own story, you're always the victor. So the stories that have been passed down by your family for generations and all of that always presents you as a great people. I know in my family, they talk about my grandfather did all this other stuff, so I feel proud. We are proud people. So immigrants all over, people in general feel proud of their lineage, of who they are, except African Americans, because it's been beat into you. I mean, not that we understand the progress that we've made, but the narrative constantly is that of us being subservient, of us being enslaved, of being dragged. Like anytime our history is told, it starts within that context. So it makes it very difficult, like you were saying, to even be bolstered by, I don't know what y'all talking about, especially as an immigrant, you come here. Yeah, I may be washing the toilet right now, but like I'm good. I know who I am. I got people back home. I'm somebody. You know what I mean? And this is just a temporary situation, And that's an important thing because we talk about self-limiting beliefs on this show. What you think is your reality. And for you to try to break away from it is the work that we talk about. This idea that you can be anything that you believe yourself to be, but you necessarily have to believe it first. But when everything around you has been that you are a nobody, you will never amount to anything, and the system reinforces that over and over and over, it is amazing that Black people in America are who they are. I mean, that in and of itself, the fact that you're just still breathing, that you wake up and you haven't collapsed. I can't even watch a video. That's how weak I am. Like, I understand. And I'm somebody who, like I'm Nigerian. I feel like I have some things that I can pull on, but I can't even. Anyways, I think that's the injustice, is to have the victor be told that you actually think you're strong or that you've won, but you're actually a victim, and for you to buy into it. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're some amazing people, Anyways, go ahead.
Do we need to take a break?
I just need something to wipe my face. Go ahead. Yeah, maybe we'll cut this out. Go ahead. 1 second.
What? We're gonna cut this out. You can't.
Okay.
Go ahead.
But anyway, so that's part of the.
Do you want to actually have no crying before we actually start?
I know. I'm sorry. But that's part of the miseducation, Like, there's so much of our story that's been contorted and twisted, misinterpreted, and then served up to us to make us believe that, you are this person that is deserving of having life, taken away from you in broad daylight. And people are just, there wasn't even an arrest. You know what I mean? Like, it's flabbergasting. It wasn't an arrest until later, until the outrage. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, where I was going is the implicit biases that that others share is being shared by us as well.
Yeah, we buy into it.
And you think that if you really think about it, for those of you out there who are minorities, particularly the Asian community, primarily because there is this idea of this model minority, and there is this sense that there is this focus on their ability to work hard. And I don't know exactly what the numbers are right now, but I can tell you that it's likely that despite the fact that Asian people are getting better grades and all this other stuff, and this is precisely why it was that there was a lawsuit that was brought on supposedly by Asians. It ended up being that it was by another organization that was white, and their whole point was to try to take down affirmative action. But Yale students, supposedly, challenge the affirmative action, the idea of considering race, not affirmative action, the idea of considering race as one of the factors in terms of permitting people to go in, and which is ridiculous because not only is race considered, legacy is considered, which is essentially affirmative action for rich white folks. But in any case, there was that challenge, and so there are, a group of people, and you brought up Issa, in the
Asian.
Insecure
Yeah.
episode where they travel to Punta Cana,
No, Puerto Vallarta.
Puerto Vallarta, whatever. One of
Mexico.
Mexico. I said
Punta
Punta
Cana.
Cana.
Where is Punta Cana? Is it
That
Mexico
is-
too?
No, that is.
No, that's Dominican Republic. Okay.
Let me not get on them too, because
Yeah.
I'm Haitian,
Yeah.
and you know.
We're not
In
gonna
any
talk
case,
about
we ain't gonna talk about
the
that.
Dominicans.
Anyways, so there is they travel to Mexico, and there was an episode where the Asian was like, well, we all get discriminated against, like, but it's how you handle it and that sort of thing. And the idea is that the discrimination is the same, or in the fact remains that the fact that we can see each other, like when you talk about soldiers going through PTSD from going through war for 3 years, maybe going to Iraq for a number of years, and this is not to diminish the type of violence that they saw, but to understand the kind of things that Black African American population have to witness and pass on to themselves generations down, and think that they are not bearing that, and think they're not, internalizing that. Like even us are sitting there thinking, oh, what did this man do? He fucking passed on a counterfeit bill. Okay. And so if you multiply that by the ways that we can see ourselves as less than, if you think about the fact that we are, another thing that people will say is, what about the black on black crime that's happening? And if you think about the fact that part of that is happening because of our self-hate, of the fact that we are so helpless, in the only person that is vulnerable enough for us, only group of people vulnerable enough for us to take out our pain on is ourselves. If you think about that, and you think about the fact that the trauma that was brought on is not being addressed,
and it's not
and
that
then
was
these people,
brought on, that
let me
continues
finish.
to be brought
So
on.
So the thing is that
My bad.
So the thing is that I feel like I have. Okay. Anyway, the thing is that when you think about this sort of thing that's happening, this phenomenon that's happening in the African American community, and none of those factors are being considered by Asians, because it's like, oh, just work your ass off, just work hard like we are, as if you are coming in with those same. With that same history, as if you're coming in with that same amount of trauma and having to overcome it, is just ridiculous. Number one, to not acknowledge how much more work we would have to do to get to that position, is kind of problematic. But yeah, I forgot what else I was going to say on that. But.
Yeah, but the point that I was trying to make is number one. And
let me. Here's the thing. This is what I wanted to say also in continuation of that. But, and I'm gonna put a but there. That's why for me, considering all these factors that are interplaying into the reason why we find ourselves here, year after year, having to protest. It is not just a policing issue. It is so encompassing. The racial wealth gap is ridiculous. The the trauma that is not being addressed through mental health issues is ridiculous. The fact that we are not able to start providing education at such a young age for our children is ridiculous. And so when you think about the idea of protesting just the policing and police brutality, it's like if we really wanted something to happen, it's really got to be the government, United States, and all of its citizens need to be like, here is our brother here suffering, and the amount of resources that we need to galvanize to get them to where they need to be is so great. Asians, whites, Hispanics need to all be in on this, yes, because we are as strong as our weakest link. If we were all strong, the country is stronger. And if everybody's like, oh, why are you protecting? Well, all these things are so big. But I also think that's also why I'm thinking to myself, just protesting police brutality is not enough. And we can't also wait on them
No.
to get on board. Like, let's get on our shit. Like, what do we need to do?
Yeah.
Because maybe they never get on board.
So before we touch upon that, I do think it's necessary just to put all of this in context before we start moving. This is the definition of systemic racism. I mean, let's just be clear. People, I'll have conversations with people in various walks of lives and spaces, well-meaning white people, well-meaning Hispanics, well-meaning immigrants, well-meaning Nigerians, who you just addressed, who have a certain perspective about, why can't Black people get their shit together? And I think unless we truly understand what's going on, the system is designed and is working as is. The system was specifically designed to keep Black people oppressed so that white people can be in the position of power. That's just what it is. That's the beginning of the founding of this country. And the system is working as is. So we can't sit here and then pick one aspect of the system and say, well, this is horrible. Why what we're doing really is victim blaming. I mean, that's just the bottom line. We're blaming the victim, and we're confused that the system is acting the way it is when that is in the design. And I think there's a part of us, particularly maybe white people who have amassed, power, wealth, who they want to believe that this all happened based on hard work. There's a reconciliation, or coming to terms with the system being rigged in their favor that I think most white people, most immigrants, and what most people are not willing to do. So that's just that. I think we just have to accept that for what it is. And if we're debating that, then the solution as to how to address it will always be on different pages on that. You know what I mean? So if we can understand and agree that the system is fundamentally racist, therefore its output is going to be racist acts, and unless we address the system and rewrite the code, we're going to perpetually be in this space. So that's just a fact. Now, the quote from Baldwin that I wanted to read is, white people should try to find in their heart why it was necessary for them to have a nigger in the first place. I'm not a nigger, I am a man. If I'm not the nigger here and you invented him, you the white people invented him, then you have to find out why. And the future of the country depends on that, whether or not it is able to ask that question. Does that make sense? Yes. And then my follow-up before you speak to that, because I think these two go together, is it's a very rare man who does not victimize the helpless. So on one hand, the system, white people, I mean, let's just be honest. White people found a need to have someone who they've decided they are better than, they're more powerful than, and always have to, in context to themselves, always have to put down and look at as less than so that they can feel more powerful. And until that idea is understood, until that idea is analyzed and maybe reconsidered, it's always what we're going to be here. And I think what's also important, the reason I wanted to put this is because, yes, there's systemic racism. And I think there's some really well-meaning white people who actually don't maybe even consider the system as a whole. They're just considering themselves as individuals. So they're not really understanding how everything is playing into each other. But we also have to understand, and this is what Baldwin said, which I thought was interesting, is that when you are in a position of power, he says it's a very rare man who does not victimize the helpless, And I know some people will say, well, if I was here, I wouldn't do, but maybe not. You know what I mean? Maybe.
I want to understand. So, a very rare man. What does that mean to you? That does not victimize the helpless. Because okay, so they're saying. Okay, let me first ask you, what does that mean to you?
A very rare man that doesn't victimize the helpless.
Yeah, victimize the helpless. Rare.
Okay, so if we were to speak of ourselves as human beings, and what is accrued to me as a human being should be accrued to the next person. I should be on equal footing with them. They should have what it is our nature to want to distinguish ourselves from the next person by, thinking we're better, by showing ourselves to be better, and if forced to, proving that we're better, particularly when the other person is trying to put themselves on the same footing as us. So I think what he's saying is, as much as we ascribe to be better as human beings, it is just our nature to take advantage of the weak. And if your value has become like so connected to the idea of you being powerful, you're going to necessarily find reasons for you to exploit the weak or keep people weak. You're going to figure out ways for you to not only remind yourself, but remind everybody else that you're more powerful than them. Mm-hmm. Let's put this in context of America versus the rest of the world. We are the world. We remind everybody first and foremost, let me let you know, we got the guns and the, we got everything, Now let's have a conversation. You know what I mean? Like you're always pressing this, it's not, come on people, we're human beings. Nah, I need to let you know that I am way more powerful. I can obliterate you if you don't play nice, and we've seen it time and time and time again. It happens time and time and time. I need to take from you is the reason why we're in the places that we're in fighting wars, is the reason why, with the press of a button, whole cities got destroyed, during World War II. You know what I mean? Is the reason why we were so concerned about the Cuban Missile Crisis, because it's never really about us as human beings living side to side, next to each other. It's always about me positioning myself as being more powerful. And because of that, I need you to fall in line. And when you don't, I need you to be reminded that I'm more powerful. And I'm going to go to whatever extent to do that. Does that make sense? So I think there's something, forget the fact that there's systemic racism, because there is, and the systemic racism has, it's exactly what's going on with the rest of the world. America has positioned itself as bigger, badder, better, and more ready to go to war than the rest of the world. So try it, but that's what's going on here in America. And I don't think we want to allow ourselves to come to terms with that. White people, based on money, influence, power, weapons, and all of that, they have positioned themselves as bigger, badder, better. And every citizen who happens to fall within that realm feels it. The benefits of you being white in America is accrued to you because you can stand up tall and be like, try it, And that's the reason why you have the white woman. I didn't even watch this video, who called the cops and was like, "Oh, you coming to my?
So interesting.
I am going to." Huh?
I remember seeing it. It was like, wait, they have the same last name? I forget their names now.
Oh, they have the same. I didn't watch the video. I don't know about it. But somebody was telling me that the woman called the cop and was like, I'm going to say a black man is threatening my life, when all he was doing.
She not only said she was going to do it, she actually did it.
She did it. Yeah. So, but that's the point, right? The point is, because once again, I just think before we even go into how do we resolve this, the fact is that because this is systemic, okay, the game is that in which white people are in positions of power. That's just a fact. I mean, we could try to debate it and say, we're all Americans, aren't we? Why does one stop? white people in positions of power, the white people individually understand this, and that's the reason why we have Trayvon Martin happening with what's his name, the random white guy who decided to shoot him.
I don't care.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
whatever
his name is, or because you inherently understand when you're in a position of power that I wish you would try it, because if I'm feeling like I need to prove something to you right now, I can do it. And I know more than likely I'm going to get away with it. So that's the systemic part of it, because that's just a fact. And then what I'm saying is that it's a very difficult thing, because it's part of our nature as human beings. It's a very difficult thing to now ask white people to collectively just abandon what seems to be a natural instinct for one to want to feel better than the other, for one to want to oppress the other person. It's a very difficult thing. Do you disagree?
Wait, could you ask that question again? It's a difficult thing for what?
For someone who is in a position of power to not feel the need every now and then to flex that position, particularly when someone who is the powerless is basically questioning or trying to put themselves on equal footing. It's like you as a man or you as an adult, when you're talking to your son, it's all cute. We could be giggling and all, but I need you to remember, I'm the adult, or if you're with your fellow guy friends or what have you, this is cool and all, but listen, if you trying to put me in my, like everybody, no, it's very difficult for you, as much as you want to play nice, it's part of our nature as human beings to flex and separate ourselves as being better or whatever than the next person, particularly when they are weak.
Yeah, I suppose it's the ego. The ego and its need to separate itself. That's how it would be described in circles of people who talk about the ego and overcoming the ego and killing the ego. In essence, it's you are trying to be different. The ego's existence is to separate itself, is to be different than the collective. It, without going too deep into it, it's so interesting. I think, the ego kind of gets a bad rep because I think obviously, if you are a person who believes in this sort of thing, the universe would, in the all-encompassing, the infinite intelligence, whatever you want to call it, God, if that's how you want to put it, would not have put it in there if it didn't want it in there, right?
If the ego wasn't necessary.
Yeah. The ego is there to, as far as human beings are concerned, is to differentiate us and to create the multitude of expression of the universe's aspect as it is. And so in some ways it's there precisely because it's meant to be there. The issue is that we are all asleep and don't realize that this ego, this mechanism, is there forcing us to push ourselves against each other or away from each other. And in some ways it also creates conflict, because we're pushing away from each other. We're saying I'm better, and sometimes even I'm worse. Like victimizing yourself is also one of the ways to do that as well.
To differentiate yourself.
A lot of people feel better by saying, "Oh, woe is me," and so
And I think that's also part of the narrative that we started playing into as Black people as well. Is we're the we occupy, and it's true. That's not to say that we're not the worst treated or what, yes, we are in a pretty bad position here, but it almost feels like that's now our badge, like we're walking around with it as what? Why are you laughing?
No, I say that because I remember when we had this discussion yesterday, we talked about how we don't, like, part of the reason you were upset about the protest was because we're always being seen as people who are protesting. What about the various other things that we do? Like, it's either protesting or sports or,
Rap.
entertainment, rap, you said specifically.
Yeah, we're either here to entertain you or we're going to be killed. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
kind of like in the old days when, you have those muscle men who are fighting to death. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, and Biggie said either you're selling crack rock or you got a wicked jump shot. So sports or some sort of illicit activity. But I say this because one of the things that I had said was, there are just so many different ways that shit. I have to cut this out because I forget what we were talking about right before that.
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, it doesn't matter. But the reason why I wanted to put those two quotes together is because I just think it's important for us to understand, number one, as a country, that these aren't aberrant sort of, bugs in the system. This is exactly how the system was meant to work. It's meant to differentiate white people as the powerful, even all our narrative, how we present ourselves to the world, how we engage in general, the history, but all of that, there's a value that we have placed on being bigger, better, being the, oppressing where we need to do, but, on power, so we just need to be honest. We just need to have honest conversations with that. I think it's important for white people to acknowledge that. I think it's more so important for Black people to acknowledge that. And I think the reason it's important, particularly when we say it's a very rare man who does not victimize the helpless. The reason I think it's important for us to acknowledge that is because we will continue to be in this space unless we decide as Black people ourselves that we want a different narrative. I don't believe the system is, first of all, the system is not going to change itself. Our value, that fundamentally who we are as a country is powerful people. Who white people see themselves as, gods, so you're essentially asking them to start to think about themselves differently when it's hardwired into them. That's not possible. And because of how they view themselves and the value they place on power and all of that, it's very difficult for us to not find ourselves here over and over because it's just our human nature. Once you've now decided that you're more powerful, to flex and remind people who are less powerful than you that you are more powerful. So that's what I wanted to explore. Now, the next quote, and then we'll get to what I want to get to. I think this quote is going to lead us to, what we talked about yesterday in terms of what we can do. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced.
It's good.
You like that?
It's good. It's a good quote.
He's a good man. What that means to me is, at some point, we just got to come to terms with what's going on here. I think as a nation, we've been dancing around the obvious. To me, what seems to be obvious, when you go back and read, there's another quote here, which I think is really good. Let me see if I can find it. It was so good. Okay, I don't have it. But Baldwin basically says, you think the pain and the hurt that you're experiencing now is unprecedented until you go back and study history, is essentially what it is. I wish I had the quote. Basically, this is the status quo. Ain't nothing changed. There's nothing new here. It is what it feels particularly egregious. It feels particularly bad, especially because we're seeing it. But when you go back and read the state of America in the 1800s, early like this is who we've always been. We just don't live long enough to warn the new generation that, oh no, we've been here before, enough to then say, well, this is crazy, why do we continue to do this? We don't live long enough to do that. Before we can learn the lessons, we die, and then the new generation comes and now they're outraged. What? This is crazy, how can we do this? So we fall into the same narrative. But the reason why I really like this one is that we may not be able to change everything, but at some point, in order for us to really enact real change, we're just going to have to come to terms and face the state of the world. We're going to have to realize this is what it is. So now we need to come with the right set of solutions to really address where we are. That's how I interpret that. What about you?
So, I mean, I don't know that there needs to be interpreted. I think it's
obvious.
I think it's prima facie when they say in law they say prima. I think it means on its face.
It's obvious. It's you take it at face value.
Yeah, exactly. So I think you can't change anything until you face it. But it's not necessarily that I want to interpret what he is saying as much as what I want to say is that I feel like James Baldwin was also speaking to the white audience for the most part. It was trying to get a group of people who don't, and a lot of people have been doing that too. In social media, I've seen a lot of different things, and every time I see it, I'm like, oh, this is great. This is a nice way. Like there was Meek Mill. He had this little thing that he posted where it was explaining systematic racism, and it was talking about the differences in tax dollars and redlining the banks did, which prevented people from being able to buy homes, which is one of the greatest ways that we are able to build wealth. And Ta-Nehisi Coates also has an article on the Atlantic that became very big when Obama was in the case for reparations. And before I read that, I was like, I don't know if I want to do reparations, for multiple reasons. But he made a very strong case, and I was like, wow, this is good.
Yeah.
But he's also talking to essentially a white audience.
Yeah.
And not just more than anything, probably those who are potentially sympathetic, the people who just don't know or are unawares, the people who would be willing to listen. And my feeling is on this is twofold. One is, okay, you might be able to get some in the middle. That's all good and fine. But there are a group of people that are hardened on the other side, and they are not reading the shit that you are saying. And so for the most part, you're speaking to the choir. When I went and saw that little tidbit that Meek Mill put, I was like, oh, this is so great. But yeah, I'm already convinced.
What did he say?
I don't know, like a tidbit about systematic racism.
Okay, yeah.
So, anyways, like, yeah, this is so great. Like, yeah, this is explaining it in a great way so people can understand. And I'm like, well, yeah, I would actually click on this because I'm in the choir. You're preaching to me. And so the Trumps of this world, and there are way too many of them who hold positions of power, couldn't give three shits.
Yeah.
And so from my perspective, my issue with all of this speaking in the with your blowhorn, whatever you call it, to these people is pointless. Not necessarily pointless. Hopefully you can get them to change. And you say that nothing has changed. I mean, relatively speaking, nothing has changed, right? Relatively, if you're talking about, I forget the other term for not relative, but, clearly lynchings have gone down.
Well, have they?
Some numbers.
People getting killed in broad daylight.
It's just, I would have to look at the numbers, but I think, I don't think the lynchings are as much as they have been. Yes, you are getting. You can call what is happening
gunned down, lynching, people taken from.
I don't think
the
they're happening in the same
thrown
numbers.
into jail, into prison, people die. I mean, I'm just saying.
Whatever.
Okay.
The point is that there is a lot of different things that are not as they were, but relative in terms of, okay, here's our wealth, here's their wealth. And when you consider in terms of inflation, what our poverty level is, maybe nothing has changed as much. But from my perspective, no, not even but. As a result, if you consider these things, if you believe these things as well, that there is nothing that has changed, then why are we still talking to these people? By these people, I'm talking about white folks. Let me
trying to convince
them. Get you to come in.
Yeah.
And so that's, to me, again, just to keep on coming back to this idea of protest fatigue, is the reason why I'm like, why? Like, okay, we need to now think about what we have to do. And it's sort of like the a more economic version of, and there are many people who are talking about this, whether it's Boyce Watkins or from before Amos, I forget his full name, but his last name was Amos, who wrote the book Blueprint for Black Empowerment or Black Power. People have been talking about like economic empowerment for a long time, and from my perspective, we need to be talking to ourselves about what we need to do, because first and foremost, we're not gonna get the 47%.
I don't know.
You know what I'm saying? The Republicans, in essence, you have, I don't know what the number is, but there's a group of people who are going to be for Trump no matter what. That group, you're not gonna get them.
Yeah.
And then do we, and potentially, we can say, well, they're dying out and then eventually it will change, potentially. But I also see that, we are falling behind. Not only are we no longer the, by we, I'm talking about African Americans, which I, as a Black person in the U.S., identify with, but also would be identified as. By those who are not African American and even African Americans. And so when I say we, I'm like, we are falling behind in terms of not only our population in the United States to Hispanics, but we are also potentially falling behind economically. Like, we're continuing to occupy the lowest rung. And if we don't start focusing on ourselves instead of waiting potentially for these people to die, and then perhaps another group is like, well, why didn't you do your own thing? Like, I mean, we've had debates with minorities, both Asian and Hispanic, who are like, you people just aren't doing your shit. And so at some point we need to be like, we need to focus on ourselves, and instead of trying to talk to them, hey, screaming, we need to help, we need you to help us. We need to be like, okay, on a day-to-day basis, what are the sacrifices that we need to make to get our shit together? Because we can't wait for these other people to get on board. And I think that has been my frustration with the protest.
So I think this quote actually speaks to both sides of the fence. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. That goes for white people. Listen, we're not going to address the issue of racism unless you all are ready to address the fundamental systemic disparities that have been built into the system. And in order to do that, you're going to have to essentially give up your power. That's not an easy thing to ask anyone to do. That's not an easy thing to ask white people to do. So, but y'all going to have to deal with that. That's up to you to figure out if and when you want to come to terms with that. In the meantime, Black people need to understand you just got to face reality for what it is, okay? The reality is that freedom is not going to come as a result of white people saying we're going to give up our position in power.
Yeah, there was another quote by somebody else who said something about freedom is not given or something like that, or some. I remember. I need to look up that quote.
It's a known concept. You can't ask your oppressor to. Okay, so let me read you another quote, which I think speaks to it. Not only was I not born to be a slave, he says, I was not born to hope to become the equal of the slave master. Do you understand what I'm saying? They may tolerate you. Yeah, you can eat at the table, but for you to have the audacity to think we're the same, like, you're a non-motherfucking factor. You're not a factor. You understand what I'm saying? Like when I think about the future of America and we're putting tables together and people get so concerned, well, there's not enough diversity on the boards of corporate America. Well, no shit. You're not a factor. When we think about power, when we think about who's running the country, when we think about Congress, when we talk about the people who are the masters, who are in control, it's not you. We can tolerate you, but for you to have the audacity to think that you could even hope to become the equal is like, they look at you like, that's weird. Stop being weird. Stop being weird. Don't do that. You can eat at the table. Maybe you come to the dance, but now you trying to be the prom queen and king? Come on. Just stop. So anyways, okay. So those are the quotes. I mean, there's so many quotes. I would recommend that people go back and study James Baldwin, because I think he speaks so eloquently and frankly on race in a way that it's not even, like there's not a lot of emotion tied into it. It's just a matter of fact, and it's, he addresses both white people and black people at the same time, and that you just got to get your shit together, on both ends. Y'all got to figure out why you decided to you needed to feel good by having slaves and, people you've put in the lowest rungs, but you want to present yourself as, something else. He actually had a quote. There was a quote about how, y'all asked me to, not look at you as racist, but your systems, your laws, you set dogs. I mean, you do everything else that you do. That's actually a good quote. Everything else that you do speaks otherwise, but you expect me to then say, nah, you my friend. No, you know what I mean? Like, you can't expect me to see what is evident, what is obvious, and interpret it differently just to make you feel comfortable. Doesn't make any sense. So that's that. Now, I think the rest of the segment is about what we're going to do as black people, right? Because I feel like white people are not the ones concerned about this. The outrage is coming from black people. It's kind of like somebody's stepping on your foot, right? You're the one who feels the pain, as opposed to you trying what you can to pull your leg. You're looking at somebody else who don't even, like, they somebody else, and you're like, please, don't you understand? My foot is in pain and everything. And they're looking at you like, what? Move your damn foot. Like, I can't, I'm sitting here enjoying a good meal. You want me to make your issue my issue. Nah, you need to figure out how you're going to remove your foot from under the table. And I think that's the reality that we need to really understand. We cannot expect other people who are not feeling the pain, who are not in the position, people who, quite frankly, enjoy their position of power. And as difficult as it may be for us to process, it's actually human nature to want to keep your power. But we're looking at them and we want them to make our issue their issue. That's just not realistic. That being the case, I understand that black people, we got to do what we can, but for the most part, we feel helpless and we're coming from a position of weakness. We don't know what to do. A lot of people talk about how, we don't know who our leaders are. We just got to vote. Like we seem to feel like there's a template for what needs to be done so that we can get the results that we want. But I think ultimately, the first thing that we've got to come to terms with, like Baldwin says, is we just got to face facts like what it is. Every time there's been a change in history, it's come as a result of great sacrifice. Great sacrifice. When we even think about America and how it's been in a position of power, they've gone to war. They've lost, people, resources, because, you're going to have to sacrifice for something. Now, we could say, yes, we've been sacrificing as black people, and that I'm not taking anything that we've done and the progress that we've made. I'm not taking that from us. But I think we need to fashion solutions that are right for the times and the circumstances that we are in today, and I think what we tend to want to do is dust out the same playbook that we've been using forever, because maybe it worked. There was a time when we needed to legislatively, like, that was the only way. We needed to have the rules change. The laws had to change for us to be considered less than human, So we had to fight legislatively. We had to go to what we need to figure out how things are going to be changed. I can no longer be considered a slave, at least on paper, So yeah, we needed to vote. We needed to do all these things. But at this point, I just think that's not to say that it's not important for us to be lining up to vote. It's not important for us to be, Twitter, copy and paste and say, yes, Black Lives Matter. All of that stuff matters. But I think back to your point earlier, I think on a day-to-day basis, we need a new playbook. Like, we need to understand that whatever that new playbook is going to come there's going to be a real sacrifice for us to undertake. And we're going to have to be okay with that, because the lives of our children, which is why we do what we do anyways. You wake up every day, you go to work for future generations. You're trying to position yourself for your children. You're trying to educate yourself, put yourself in a better place so that your children don't have to go through what you have been going through. If that's the case, then we need to rethink how we're moving on a daily basis. What are the sacrifices that we're willing to make today so that we can bring about a change for ourselves? Not necessarily so that white people can come to the table and tell us, okay, fine, we'll let you come to the party. Nah, how are we going to create our own party? What are we going to do for ourselves that is going to put us back in the position of changing the narrative that we've been handed down? And those are the things that I think we need to really start to iron out for ourselves. So for me, what I came to terms with, so I'm going to say how all of this is kind of coming full circle for me. Part of the reason I started thinking about leaving my job was because 2 or 3 years ago, we decided to buy Black for a year, because we wanted to help to contribute to the Black economy, and it made sense. Why are we spending so much of our money elsewhere? So we took this challenge upon ourselves to buy Black. And it was difficult. It was a difficult year for the children, for ourselves, driving out of the way to find gas, not being able to shop regularly, trying to find vegetables, buy clothing. All of it was difficult. What we realized is we don't own a lot of stuff. Black people do not own a lot of stuff. We do music well, and we do clothing well. That's pretty much it,
Do we do clothing well?
We have a lot of fashion. Black people got the swag. Yeah, we do it well.
We wear it well.
We got the
do
cool.
We own it well?
You're right. That's a good point. That's it. Because how many labels?
We look good.
We do look good.
We like Will Smith said in Men in Black, I make the Ray-Bans look good.
You're right. We look good.
We don't own the Ray-Bans.
We rock
make
it well.
Look good.
We rock it well. Anyways, the point is that going through that period, I realized for myself personally that, yeah, we want to support Black businesses, but that's not enough. I mean, money is really just a representation of time, your talents. It's a representation of something much bigger. And if I'm going to really contribute to the progress of the Black economy in any way, I need to own something. I need to own a Black business that can have, exponential benefit, not just through my money, but through my talents, my time, employment of other Black people. My children are seeing this as a possibility, so therefore they'll own their own businesses. That's really what got me thinking about, no, I need to spend more of my time within the Black community, owning something as a Black person. And I think that was what started us off on this course, at least for me. And I think once we were done with the buying Black, we sort of went back to our day-to-day habits, buying whatever we wanted from anywhere without really thinking about how we were spending our money, even though now we're working on a Black business and hoping to provide additional support to other Black businesses by making them viable. But what I realized yesterday was Yeah, no, we need to go back to we need to go back to rethinking where we spend not only our time and talents, but our money. So the first thing that, at least for me, that I think I'm going to be doing moving forward, and that I would encourage people to do, however uncomfortable it's going to be. And I know it's going to be, because we've tried this before. And I remember, when we would tell people this is what we're doing, people were just like, "Oh my God, how do you get gas?" And we would tell them.
Good luck to you.
Yeah, and that was what it was.
That's nice.
That was what it was. It was
and
nice.
I remember feeling like, I want to say frustrated, kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe that's the response we're getting. Like, from family members, when we put it on our WhatsApp group, and people were like, oh, well, nobody was like, let's go. And part of the reason why it was so upsetting to me is because every time something like this happens, or every time, we got to get together, guys. Like, we all got to figure out how we put our money together, and all these whimsical ideas of what to do. And how do we get all of Black people internationally to get together? And it's like these huge initiatives that you need to put together, and then we're like, buy Black. That's a little. You difficult.
Driving out of your way to get gas? Not doing that.
And yes, it is a sacrifice, and this is very, very important, because the racial wealth gap. Like, when we're talking about average in 2016, white people made $170,000 in their net worth, and then Black people $17,000. When you're talking about that kind of gap, you're going to be treated like nothing. Mm-hmm. You don't have power. What else do you expect? And so, like, we are so busy. When you talk about, looking good in fashion, we're so busy looking good. And that's what it amounted to, because, you had to convince me. And, and I applaud you for pushing it. And I applaud myself, actually, for not pushing you to do this by Black.
Yeah.
But, I have to applaud myself for not saying I'm completely, like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm not doing that. But you were definitely the driver. And but I remember thinking, okay, my kids are in middle school. You saying I'm not going to allow them to look good? Like, I can't buy the clothes that they're going to. You're saying I can't feed them, all this stuff. And all of it boils down to how you look. Mm-hmm. I remember people coming into our homes, and our pantry was completely empty. Like, people looked. I remember your brother and his wife came in, and we had nothing in our fridge, because it was so freaking difficult to freaking buy food. And then, like, it got to the point where we can't go to the grocery stores. We had to go to buy food at 7-Eleven, because it was Ethiopian
owned.
And it's not. We're just talking franchise. So it wasn't necessarily even completely owned by them. Like, when we went to go buy gas, had to travel to Baltimore to get it from Rockville. If you have any sense, it's like 45 minutes away to get gas. So we have to spend gas to get gas, and then spend gas on the way back to where we needed to go. Everything. It is a difficult freaking.
Oh, what about produce? Like, to get produce, you gotta. I remember having to drive after work like an hour to DC to go pick up my community support.
Toilet paper had to be ordered in from, like, Freedom Papers and things of that nature. It's a difficult ask.
It is.
But the most difficult part of it, let me be clear. Yes, it is an inconvenience. Some people also have to spend more when you have very little to begin with. But the truth is that there are sacrifices that you can make in other places that you spend, if it's really that important to you. Sacrifice. But I think the biggest piece is, really, I'm like, what happens when I can't do these things and other people are looking at me like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, for me, that was,
how am I going
what
to
it
look?
was. How am I going to look? And this is
people.
The thing.
Yeah.
We are so busy trying to look a certain way. Listen, when you look at $17,000 is our net worth compared to 170. First, you don't got it.
We don't got it.
You don't.
Let's stop playing games.
You don't have it. Stop trying to look like you have it. You don't got it.
We may be able to get it if we focus. We got to build now.
We got to build it.
We got to build.
This is why this is a some days today. Like, I wanted to get to this point, because whether you want to get to some place, whether you want to get to some place individually, or if you want to get to there collectively, when you talk about facing the issue is you don't fucking got it. Stop trying to look like you got it collectively, and let's all get down to, this whole social media where everybody's like, oh, look at the places I'm traveling, look at how I'm looking, look at the clothes, whatever. We collectively need to be like, okay, we ain't got it. We're gonna have to scale back. We're gonna have to not look good. We're gonna have to now start buying from each other, so that when somebody says, I'm going to start a business, everyone is supporting. We are now creating a whole ecosystem. People have talked about this sort of thing where, you have a directory of black businesses and all this stuff. The minute we collectively say that's how it's going to be is when we collectively start finding solutions to the shit that's going to make it less hard for me to find gas.
Yes.
Or toilet paper. Yes. And the issue is that, and I think this is the point that you were making yesterday, is we've been focusing on, you got to vote, you got to protest, you got to do all of this stuff, but there needs to be a collective understanding. We need to fucking support our own. We need to build our own, and we need to do it today. And we need to now figure out, the wealthy, instead of spending all your money on, trying to ramp up the vote or whatever it is you're spending your money on, how can we contribute to black-owned businesses being successful?
Yeah.
This is got to be the
daily
prevailing with on a 365-day thing. How do we support ourselves so that we can narrow the wealth gap, and so we can hire our own people. People don't understand how much small businesses, impact the community. You hire people. You get more. When we talk about an employment rate, when America catches a cold, black people catch a flu. Well, if we were hiring ourselves and supporting our own selves, we may not need to catch a flu because we're still hiring ourselves. We still are able to now get that money and spend it, multiply it into the community, pass it into one another, figure out how we're going to provide the basics.
Or just imagine, remember when Obama became president? Our kids have no concept of what it means to not be able to envision the possibility of a black man in the White House, because it's happened. When I was growing up, that just seemed like fantasy. That's like saying horses can fly. It's like, oh well, I mean, I guess I could imagine it, but that's not reality. We know that, right? You know what I mean? So the point is, more than anything, when we talk about the exponential effect, even monetarily that you just discussed, but just when you think about pushing beyond boundaries that we've imposed on ourselves, for your child to see you as a business owner reconfigures their mentality and the possibilities for them in terms of their future. Right now, even our kids, as much as we talk about ownership, entrepreneurship, they looking at us like, oh, we can't wait to go to college and get a job. And we looking at them like, no, you're going to own something. But the thing is, there's so much in terms of, what we're getting, how we're being hardwired, how we're being taught. There's so much that we have to push against, that it's important. When they talk about, seeing black images, seeing a black Barbie means a lot. Seeing a black president means a lot. There's a lot that, being able to envision something does to your psyche, because now you realize someone who looks like you has done it. So of course I can do it. So it opens up the world of possibilities. But the point is, people, it's time to build. We don't have time. We can't talk. I'm just so tired of talking. We're not doing this no more. We're not. And this is the quote that I was thinking. You think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world. But then you read it. Remember, I wasn't able to find it. But this, we've been here before, people. We've been here. We've done this. At this point, we build. That's if we're not building. And I think there's two things. Okay, let me just quickly say the two things before we go further down. The two things when we're building that we need to realize is, number one, it's inconvenient. That's where we are. We have fought for convenience. We understand that. My ancestors did not fight for me to be whatever that narrative is. Yes, we fought for convenience. At this point, now we need to put the luxury of convenience on hold for the future. That is something that we're going to have to do. We need to understand it's going to be inconvenient. And then I think the second thing is back to what James Baldwin says. We can sit here and circle around the problem and the solution all day until you face it. We won't be here forever. Yeah. So we could either do it tomorrow or we could do it today. We don't have any other time. It's going to be inconvenient, but at some point you're going to have to do it. Otherwise, we're going to be here forever. And what are we doing? It's a waste of time. So I want us to really allow that to kind of just settle in. We're not begging white people for nothing no more. We got it. We got the talents. We got the resources. We have the luxury of convenience. But now we're going to put it on hold because we've decided there's something greater at play that we need to collectively focus our energy on. And when I say focus our energy on, because yesterday you and I also talked, well, what does this mean? What are we asking people to do? I think at the end of the day, if you don't go to bed saying, I have spent most of my talents, most of my time, most of my energy, most of my resources on Black issues, either building a Black business, supporting a Black person, having communications with Black brothers and sisters, volunteering in Black nonprofits, whatever it is, if most of your time was not spent pushing forward the Black agenda, you need to go ahead and mark that day as a failure. Like, I don't know what else. It just seems harsh, but I think it's kind of like trying to lose weight. I was supposed to run 5 miles today, eat so many calories today. I didn't do that. Well, that wasn't a good day. Tomorrow is another day, but hopefully you're going to rededicate and recommit yourself to doing that. And I think unless this becomes a lifestyle, this is not a once in a 4 year, we're going to line up and vote thing. I mean, that's part of the lie. We think we're doing something, but we're not. We're not doing it. We gotta refocus our energy, and the luxury of convenience is no longer affordable to us. We can't.
Yeah. Again, to bring it back to some days today, there is, like you said, the recognition, the facing the fact that you have to do something, and then there is the work. Like, and I think I don't know how much we stress that, or if we need to stress it enough. This is something that I often try to convey in the other episodes. It's like, yeah, despite the fact that I recognize this now, because that's the first step, acknowledgement or facing it, like Baldwin said, it doesn't mean now it's all downhill. It's when you recognize it is when you actually look up and be like, oh shit, I'm climbing a mountain. Now you got to start to go climb that damn mountain. Okay. And then, so the point is that it is going to be work, but first recognize that has to be done. And it's a mental piece. It's most of this is what you prioritize. Most of everything that you do. Like one of the things that it was a TED talk that I listened to. I don't remember the name of the person, but what he said was essentially what you like when you like he said to journal. And once you journal, you recognize where you are putting your time. You can't say, I find it important for me to spend time with my family. Then you look up and most of your time is at work. Like, how much do you really value that? Where are you actually prioritizing? How much work do you want to do? And so really, there are a lot of ways that you can shift. And yes, the mental piece, when you think about anything that you do, the mental piece is the hardest, which is why a lot of people outsource their decision making to somebody else, whether it's the church or it's like, I got to find a leader or I've got to find whatever. Decide for me. It's a tough thing. But when you, or planning even, when you have to plan, it's like, oh my God, there's so many things that, like, really it's about, okay, let me take the time to think about which things I'm going to focus on. That's what it takes. But it does take that mental shift. You have to go in and do it. And we have to first and foremost recognize the need to have that shift, because I think that is the biggest piece. Every one of us are not prepared to truly take the daily sacrifices that it takes. And even in the sacrifices really is a mental thing. I don't know if we have the mechanism to get everybody to think, because it is a difficult ass thing. Like to ask somebody, if you think about it, to ask somebody who is looking at their children, I happen to work, that person happens to work in a nice cushy job, They're able to provide everything. They can eat, they can travel, they can provide all they want for their kids. And now we're going to say, guy, change that. Not only you, but now I got to multiply it by all these different people in the world, in the Black community that needs to do the same thing. That is a difficult ask, but I don't know that that's not something that we can't do if that is the focus.
Oh yeah.
If that is the movement, instead of it being any other movement, the movement is support your goddamn self. And because I mean, obviously some people have decided that what they're going to focus on right now is one love. You know, not the idea of I got to build wealth. Everybody, each one for themselves. If you focus on yourself, I focus on myself, and then, you know, all of it will come out to be, you know, even in the long run, as opposed to saying, look, nobody, like the opioid epidemic is not going to go away because every opiate addict said, I got to fix myself. White people, white leaders decided, you know what, this is an issue that we need to tackle. The issue that is that they're not doing the same for us. So we have to now say, we have an issue we need to tackle, or it's not going to go away. Your children's children are also going to be facing this and saying, you know, we think this is unprecedented, but if you read in 2020, you know, during the COVID epidemic, we had to fight because somebody, you know, kneeled on somebody's neck. And it's going to continue to happen. And so if we don't say we got to make those sacrifices and go up that hill, it's never going to change. And so that's where it is. We got to first say we got to do it, and then the hard part is actually going through what we said. Like, it was freaking hard getting toilet paper. We had to go travel 45 minutes away to get gas. It's not easy.
Or you can't order out or go to a restaurant or anything.
We would try to find Black-owned stuff.
We would try, but imagine when we found... All right, everyone. You may notice maybe a weird glitch in the picture for those who are watching us on YouTube. But you know, we're still trying to get this all recording thing down. But it stopped recording, so the last 20 minutes or so, I believe, was not captured. So we wanted to come in to say, you know, we'll stream the sound from the audio that we captured on our phones into YouTube, so you all can hear how we closed out this segment. But just wanted to let you know that, you know, that's why you're going to be seeing the rest of the video without much, without any visuals to it. So, yeah, enjoy. We found a Black red, and you know, the kids were so excited. The point though is, I tell the kids this all the time: ain't nobody coming to save you. It's a, you know, I always imagine, was it the Thai children who was stuck in the cave or whatever? You know, sometime back, and then they had to come and be rescued. I'm sure this was Black people. Ain't nobody coming. I just need us to understand, you know. I think it's important for, and I think on some level we understand there's work to be done, but for whatever reason, because we don't truly understand the ecosystem of racism and how insidious and comprehensive it is, and for it to be dismantled, you're asking something that is actually somewhat unnatural of the people in power to do. I don't think we're ready to really understand that. You know, we think that we're truly one nation, one set of human beings, and it's one love. It's not, you know, and maybe we'll get there one day, but we don't have that time. We don't have that time. So we're at a point where we've got to realize ain't no white knight coming to save us. Ain't nobody coming. It's just us. You know, and while we have to reconcile how to dismantle this, if it's going to happen, or maybe some white people will wake up and be like, oh, that's some bullshit, let's oppress animals instead of Black people. Who knows? Maybe, you know, there would be a way to, you know, have
that's happening too. That's happening too. Well, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. But the point is, white people, they're going to figure out their own shit. Because let's also, I mean, there's another quote here that said, you know, you can't inflict hate on people without that coming back to you. So white people dealing with their own shit, whatever it is, that's fine. Let them deal with it. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know what's going on here. Whoever, I can't even watch a video of somebody's life. I can't even think about it without it bringing me to tears. But for you to be, we were talking about that the other day. It's a different type of mindset for you to take somebody's life and take it like so callously and casually. I said, oh, it's just, I just woke up today and decided to kill a man. I just woke up today and decided to lynch somebody. You've got to deal with that. Let white people deal with their shit. Like, it's fine. Let them deal with it. We've got our issues to deal with. And the fact is, ain't nobody coming. You might as well deal with it today or tomorrow, but you won't have to deal with it. And as with everything, like you said, it's a comprehensive thing. Once we decide that we are going to focus our energy on this, on resources, we've survived this long because of the fight that we've all had to come together to fight. The problem now is that the nature of the problem has evolved. So the fight now has to change. It has to match the nature of the struggle and the issue. So we can't just dust out the same old playbook and say, okay, well, oh yeah, this is where we go march. Let's go march. It's not pointless. Not that I don't want to say it's pointless, but the point is it's insufficient. So.
And also another thing, because I know that there are a ton of arguments against that, and this is not to brush over the fact that financing is important in terms of getting your business off the ground. But again, I think it's important that we say, if collectively we focus on this, solutions start to be built.
They do.
There are multiple different, there are ways that we can finance ourselves. I know that Magic Johnson is doing a lot to finance businesses in the Black community. I know, to various different degrees. Russell Simmons was doing something with financing, and finance is important if you want to, grow your business. If you want to inject capital into your business and grow, there are ways that we can do that if we start focusing on that. We do not have to rely on these white banks. We can start small. We can start our own businesses. There is this book when we took this construction class in Baltimore, which was sponsored by a Black-owned bank, the Harbor Bank. This, but the man started out essentially as a numbers runner. And, eventually he went into real estate. And then from real estate, he started his own ability to finance, different real estate deals. And it's about us, if there is a need for the financing part, I think we can come up with people who can start the financing piece of it. And that
the role
way
we
don't
can
have
play
to rely on that.
The role we can play, even as individuals, is, you mentioned Harbor Bank. We took our money out of regular banks and put it into a Black bank.
Yes,
and let me tell you, Black banks, they can
that's
fund,
been also difficult too. But just to say, just so people can understand, it's a struggle, but it's a sacrifice if you actually want to make some things.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, a lot of us are thinking these are difficult things. Yes, and it is difficult for you to figure out how to support the Black economy, but you can easily switch your mortgage over to a Black bank. That was what we did. That didn't take too long, and we actually ended up getting a lower rate with a black bank than we had before. You can take your regular bank account and put it into a Black bank so that they could be well capitalized to lend money to small Black businesses or what have you. There's so many ways for you and for all of us to play a role if we just stop and think. And that's really all it takes. It's inconvenient. That's a fact. We're not going to say it's not. But before you make a purchase for a pair of sneakers of something, can you do a quick research and see, what's a Black brand that I can support, and it may not be the flyest, but you'll rock it and make it fly. But the point is, there's just so much we could do. I just think this is the point when we need to once again put the luxury of convenience on hold. We can't be doing things out of convenience anymore. We've got to be really bothered an inconvenience, and it's got to be a daily act to move ourselves forward. There's just so much. I mean, we have some tips, but I think for me, I mean, I think this whole week, culminated yesterday with the understanding, even more so than I had before, that this is a lifestyle change for a lifetime, and unless we do that collectively, we're gonna be here in another 3 months, figuring out new ways to protest and asking white people to look at us as what we genuinely are, which is human beings. Mm-hmm. We're human beings. So I don't think we should be begging someone to look at us as human beings. The minute we are finding ourselves doing that, we should already know that we've taken the wrong turn somewhere, and we need to redirect the course of the conversation, so
yeah,
that's all I got.
Yeah, so when I finally decided I was going, because there was a Blackout Tuesday everybody was participating in, and I was thinking to myself, well, I don't want to, and on Instagram, probably who knows where else, because I only do Instagram, and I was thinking to myself, okay, I don't know, like, I don't want to be on a bandwagon, do what everybody else is doing. I mean, that was one thing, and then the other thing was, like, I also was still feeling like, okay, everybody's just putting their thing up, this little thing up, and I was thinking, what, ultimately that's not what is needed. Again, I also always want to caveat.
There's a time and place for it.
Yeah,
but it's not the full thing.
What I want to caveat is, I don't want to diminish anybody's entrance into the game, and this is probably one of the ways that people get involved. And again, because people talk, which is part of the reason why we're having this conversation. That said, I was like, man, like everything that we've been talking about, like protest fatigue. And so when I finally decided that I was going to jump into the fray, what I did was I wrote the book, and I think that's also part of what started us. I don't know if this happened you decided before or after you saw the book, but we did buy the book. It's called Our Black Year by Maggie Anderson, where she outlines a whole bunch of the different disparities, and she also discusses like her family's
experiment with buying black for a year,
which is what we decided to do. So I recommend that book, Maggie Anderson's Our Black Year. Check it out, and that's what I posted so that people can hopefully go out and take a look and try it out. Start small if you need to, but start.
Yeah.
And grow, hopefully.
Yeah. All right. I mean, to wrap up, I think the main I don't know what to ask of white people. Y'all do whatever you feel like. But I think for fellow...
white people, if you are inclined...
Thai food.
Amongst other things, I mean, everything is out of China anyways. Yeah. America makes nothing. There's no reason why you can't go out and support black folk. It shouldn't be that we have to tell ourselves to support ourselves, but we shouldn't have to tell you to support us either.
Yeah.
Go out, build. If you don't want affirmative action, if you don't want, tax dollars going to us, then spend your money with us. Yeah. And then, like I said, we are as strong as our weakest link. So, build each other as well. We don't mind that. We're just saying, if you don't, so be it, because we're going to have to support ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. Yeah, let's focus on black. I mean, I don't know. We ain't got nothing else to say. I'm tired. I don't got nothing else to say to white people, Asians, Hispanic. I'm tired. I don't got nothing else to say. Mm-hmm. However, I think black people, let's just understand, once again, ain't nobody coming. However it may be made to look like they're coming, vote today, and that ain't nobody coming. That's just a fact. That's not to say we shouldn't vote. There's a place for that. That's fine. But that's not our primary mode of building and of resistance now. That, to me, what I was saying yesterday, that's like brushing our teeth. You get up, you brush your teeth. brushing your teeth does not add value to your day until you've actually spent your day doing something of value. That's how I see voting. That's how I see twittering or whatever it is. That's nice. It's cute. We're going to raise hell. We're going to riot. But the only thing that matters is what we build. It's easy to destroy. And it's easy to raise hell. You know, like we look at our children and, you know, you screaming. Yeah, you can get attention. But the only thing that matters is what you build. So we're going to build. And it's going to be an inconvenience. It's not easy. It's going to be an inconvenience. It is what it is, you know, but we're committed for the long run so that, you know, years from now, you know, when something does happen, it's a different, we're not playing the same script and the same narrative and we're thinking this is unprecedented. We're dealing with something else. You know, Black people are not recycling, you know, the same issues. What, you know, we just need to shift our mindset. It's going to be, we're going to build, it's going to be inconvenient. And at the end of the day, it is a constant commitment to it. It's a daily commitment. So I think individually, we need to go like do some soul searching within ourselves, you know, figure out where you're spending your money, your talents, your energy, your words of wisdoms, who are you mentoring? Where are you volunteering your time? Where are you spending, you know, your nonprofit efforts? Whatever it is, I think the majority of that time should be spent within the Black community. No offense to all the randomness we do within the white community, but I think at this point, we need to be assessing on a daily basis. What did I do today? Okay, yeah, did this, made sense, you know? And tomorrow, it's a rededicated commitment to that. So that's where I'm going to go figure out where I'm going to be getting groceries and produce and clothes and all this stuff that we've fallen back on. But that's what I'm going to be doing, along with working on my Black business, you know, and maybe doing a more focused search and effort on working with Black businesses more so than we've been doing. But the fact is, you know, we need to have a renewed focus on building our Black communities. So, amen. All right. Well, it's been a tough week. You know, I think we're all hurting collectively, justifiably so. And I think that's also one thing we have to allow ourselves, no matter how we're hurting. You know, I think, you know, there are people who don't understand, who are questioning why you know, we've had a conversation about it. People are looking, you know, and, you know, judging and, you know, saying we're constantly complaining or whatever. The fact that we get up every day and we still figure out a way to put clothes on and walk out the door and try to take on the day in and of itself is fucking amazing. You know, so if we're hurting right now, it's completely understood, and I don't think we need to explain or justify our pain to nobody. We don't need to. We're human beings, and this is our humanity crying out to be recognized. So that's it.
Yes. Okay. Well, this was a special episode of Some Days Today.
Yeah. We can't say go and live your life like it's a fucking vacation, because it's not. Not today. Not today, folks. It's not a vacation. We need to go build is what we're doing right now. We need to get to work. Maybe next time we do an episode, we'll figure out how to merge work and vacation. However, right now, we getting to work. That's what we doing. So
live your life like you want to get somewhere, and it's going to take effort.
Live your life like you understand ain't nobody coming. Ain't nobody coming to save us.
Yep.
Just you and yourself in that mountain we got to climb. So let's get to it.
Yep.
Anyways.
All right.